At the time of the accident, there were 3 concrete segments that shifted and fell. Each one of those segments weighed upwards of 10,000 pounds. So 30,000 pounds shifted and applied weight to our client's left leg. My name is Joseph Donahue, and I'm a partner here at Block, O'Toole & Murphy. This case was very challenging because it dealt with a unique set of circumstances. Our client was a Sandhog, and he was working upstate, deep underground in a tunnel that was being built in order to supply water to New York City. The accident happened when a machine was transporting large concrete segments down into the underground tunnel. The machine failed. The offloader caused the segments to shift, landing on our client's legs and resulting in severe injuries. During the case, the defendants attempted to push the blame for the happening on the accident on 2 other entities. One of them was the company that created the concrete segments. The defendants argued that the concrete segments were not made according to standards, and they cracked as a result. When that theory didn't pan out, they then attempted to shift blame onto the subcontractor that actually designed and created the offloader that was using to transport the segments. That theory failed as well. And what it came down to is that the defendants were 100% responsible for the happening of the accident. At the time of the accident, there were 3 concrete segments that shifted and fell. Each one of those segments weighed upwards of 10,000 pounds. So 30,000 pounds shifted and applied weight to our client's left leg. Obviously, that resulted in catastrophic injuries. Our client suffered an open fracture to the lower portion of his left leg, what's called the tibia and fibula. That open fracture resulted in near life-threatening injuries due to bleeding and risk of infection. Unfortunately, he was a mile underground, and it took a significant amount of time to stabilize him and get him above ground, where he was airlifted to a local trauma center. At the trauma center, he underwent immediate emergency surgery to stabilize his leg, to clean out his leg, and to prepare him for the further surgeries he was going to require to ultimately repair his leg such that he could continue to walk and engage in daily activities. He was hospitalized for an extensive period of time, over 3 weeks. And during that time, he underwent multiple surgeries in order to stabilize his leg, including the placement of a rod from his knee down to his ankle joint. As time went on, despite the surgical intervention that was performed to stabilize his leg, it was determined that the result of his injuries was going to result in long-lasting limitations and the need for ongoing treatment. The extensive trauma that occurred to the left lower leg resulted in further limitations and conditions with respect to his left knee. He ultimately required a total knee replacement. Even after the knee replacement, he still suffered ongoing symptoms with his left leg, including weakness, sensation deficits, and difficulty walking. And that difficulty walking ultimately led to problems with his lower back. And it wasn't until several years after the accident that his back condition got so severe that he required a surgery to his back as well. Like I said earlier, at the outset, the defendants, who were the owners and general contractors for the project, tried to blame others for the happening of the accident. They blamed the company that designed this concrete segments that ultimately cracked and landed on our client's leg. They brought an action for products liability, claiming that these segments were not designed properly. We were able to disprove that. After that, they brought actions against the company that created the offloader that was being used to move the 3 large concrete segments. But what we were able to prove through going through tens of thousands of pages of documents was that the owner and the general contractor knew that the offloader was insufficient to move the number of segments it was moving at the time of the accident and the weight of the segments. Because when the offloader design company had asked the owner and the contractor for the specifications of the segments they were moving, they told them they were going to be moving 1 segment at a time, 1 10,000-pound segment, not 3 10,000-pound segments. And when the company designed the offloader, they designed it for just 1 segment at a time. Not only that, But they told the owner and the general contractor, once the offloader was being used, that it wasn't designed to move all 3 segments at the same time. So the owner and the contractor knew that the offloader was insufficient, and that resulted in the happening of the accident. Once we proved these facts through paper discovery and through depositions of various persons from each of the entities, we then made a motion for summary judgment pursuant to Labor Law Section 240. And Labor Law 240 requires owners and contractors to protect workers from gravity-related accidents. Accidents where either workers fall from a height or where large objects fall, causing injuries to workers. And we were able to prove and get an order from the court finding that the defendants violated Labor Law 240 and that violation was a proximate cause of the accident. So before we even got set for trial, liability had already been determined against the defendants and in favor of our client based on our Labor Law 240 summary judgment motion, which was granted. After we successfully won the motion on liability, the court set the matter down for trial. It was at that point that the defendants asked us to mediate the case to see if the case could be resolved prior to trial. We were able to obtain a settlement in the amount of $7 million for our client, as well as a complete waiver of a workers' compensation lien that he would have been required to pay back, which was over $500,000. At the time of the accident, our client was a union sandhog. Sandhogs are people that work in tunnels under the streets of New York City and throughout the state, building tunnels for railroads and trains, and he was making a tremendous amount of money. But unfortunately, due to his injuries, he was unable to return to work and was no longer able to provide for his family. This settlement gave him the opportunity to provide for his family and to live his life in dignity after the significant injuries he suffered as a result of the defendant's failure to provide him with a basic, safe place to work.